it is my privilege to introduce to you the class champions representing their grades.
The Destruction of Sennacherib by Lord Byron. The Assyrian came down like the wolf on the fold, and his cohorts were gleaming in purple and gold. And the sheen of their spears was like stars on the sea, when the blue wave rolls nightly on deep Galilee. Like the leaves of the forest when summer is green, that host with their banners at sunset were seen. Like the leaves of the forest when autumn hath blown, that host on the morrow lay withered and strown. For the angel of death spread his wings on the blast and breathed in the face of the foe as he passed. The eyes of the sleepers waxed deadly and chill, and their hearts but once heaved and forever grew still. And there lay the steed with his nostril all wide, but through it there rolled not the breath of his pride. And the foam of his gasping lay white on the turf, and cold as the spray of the rock-beating surf. And there lay the rider, distorted and pale, with the dew on his brow and rust on his mail. The tents were all silent, the banners alone, the lances unlifted, the trumpets unblown. And the widows of Ashur are loud in their wail, and the idols are broke in the temple of Baal, and the might of the Gentile, unsmoked by the sword, hath melted like snow in the glance of the Lord.
God's Grandeur by Gerard Manley Hopkins. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. It will flame out like shining from shook foil. It gathers to a greatness like the ooze of oil, crushed. Why do men then now not wreck his rod? Generations have trod, have trod, have trod, and all is seared with trade. Bleared, smeared with toil, and wears man's smudge, and shares man's smell. The soil is bare now, nor can foot feel being shod. And for all this, nature is never spent. There lives the dearest freshness, deep down things. And though the last light's off, the black west went. Oh, morning, at the brown brink, eastward springs, because the Holy Ghost over the bent world broods, with warm breast and with, bright wings.
Love 3 by George Herbert. Love bade me welcome, yet my soul drew back, guilty of dust and sin. But quick-eyed love observing me grow slack from my first entrance in, drew nearer to me, sweetly questioning if I lacked anything. A guest, I answered, worthy to be here. Love said, you shall be he. I, the unkind, ungrateful? Ah, my dear, I cannot look on thee. Love took my hand, and smiling did reply, who made the eyes but I? Truth, Lord, but I have marred them. Let my shame go where it doth deserve. And know you not, says love, who bore the blame? My dear, then I will serve. You must sit down, says love, and taste my meat. So I did sit and eat. Thank you.
Thoughtless Cruelty by Charles Lamb. There, Robert, you've killed that fly. And should you 1,000 ages try the life you've taken to supply, you could not do it. You surely must have been devoid of thought and sense to have destroyed a thing which no way you annoyed. You'll one day rue it. 'Twas but a fly, perhaps you'll say, that's born in April, dies in May, that does but just learn to display his wings 1 minute, and the next is vanished quite. A bird devours it in his flight, or come a cold blast in the night, there's no breath in it. A bird but seeks his proper food, and Providence, whose power endued that fly with life, when it thinks good, may justly take it. But you have no excuses for it. A life by nature made so short, less reason is that you, for sport, should shorter make it. A fly, a little thing you rate. But Robert, do not estimate a creature's pain by small or great. The greatest being can have but fibers, nerves, and flesh. These the smallest ones possess, although their frame and structure less escape our seeing. Thank you.
God's Grandeur by Gerard Manley Hopkins. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. It will flame out like shining from shook foil. It gathers to a greatness like the ooze of oil crushed. Why do men then now not wreck his rod? Generations have trod, have trod, have trod. And all is seared with trade, bleared, smeared with toil. And wears man's smudge, and shares man's smell, nor can foot feel being shod. And for all this, nature is never spent. There lives the dearest freshness, deep down things. And though the last lights off the black west went, O morning, at the brown brink eastward, springs because the Holy Ghost over the bent world broods with warm breast and with bright wings. Thank you.
Mowing by Robert Frost. There was never a sound beside the wood but one, and that was the sound of my long scythe whispering to the ground. What was it said? I knew not myself. Perhaps it was something about the heat of the sun, something perhaps about the lack of sound. And that was why it whispered and did not speak. It was no dream of the gift of idle hours, or easy gold at the hands of fair elf. Anything but the truth would have seemed too weak to the earnest love that laid the swale in rows. To the earnest love that laid the swale in rows. The fact was the sweetest gift that labor knows. my long scythe whispered and left the hay to make.
Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep.
Blackberry Picking by Seamus Heaney. Late August, given heavy rain and sun for a full week, the blackberries would ripen. At first, just one, a glossy purple clot among others, red, green, hard as a knot. You ate that first one, and its flesh was sweet, like thickened wine. Summer's blood was in it, leaving stains upon the tongue and a lust for picking. The red ones inked up, and that hunger sent us out with milk cans, pea tins, jam pots, where briars scratched and wet grass bleached our boots. Round hayfields, cornfields, and potato drills we trekked and picked until our cans were full, until the tinkling bottom had been covered with green ones, and on top, big dark blobs burned like a plate of eyes. Our hands were peppered with thorn pricks, our palms sticky as bluebeards. We hoarded the fresh berries in the byre, but when the bath was filled, we found a fur, a rat-gray fungus glutting our cache. The juice was stinking too. Once off the bush, the juice fermented. The sweet flesh would turn sour. I always felt like crying. It wasn't fair that all the lovely canfills smelt of rot. Each year I'd hope they'd keep. Knew they would not.
All right, what is poetry and why does it matter? This is having to do with dark sayings and naming things unknown. In Psalm 49:4, the psalmist writes, "I will incline mine ear to a parable. I will open my dark saying upon the harp." That is poetry, ladies and gentlemen. Why dark? What a strange way of saying something, a dark saying. We don't mean dark in terms of fearfulness or horror films or hairs standing on the back of our head. We mean dark in terms of clarity. When you are at dusk or twilight, which seems to happen in narrow confines in this part of the world. You can't see clearly. Why? What does that have to do with poetry? Consider this. After telling a parable about parables, Jesus is asked why he speaks in parables. His answer is really not a whole lot clearer. He said to them, "Because it is given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it is not given. For whoever has, to him more will be given. Whoever has an abundance, for whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. Therefore I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. And in them the prophecy of Isaiah was fulfilled, which says, hearing you will hear and shall not understand. Seeing you will see, but not perceive. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For assuredly I say to you, that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see what you see and did not see it, and to hear what you hear and do not hear it. So, strange. He doesn't tell parables to make it clearer. He tells parables to almost make things a little more obscure. That seems kind of strange and a little aggravating, right? But here's why. Notice what Proverbs 25:2 says. It is the glory of God to conceal a matter, but the glory of kings is to search out a matter. And that word matter is really important. I'll explain that in a second. Thus, to write, to sing, to make poetry is to be like God. Why? Because in doing so, one uses speech in a way that conceals a deeper meaning. We've been made in the image of God. That's what we do. And if we can't name it, at least we can maybe understand it. This is why Adam's first creation is not a syllogism, but a song. For when he first looked on Eve, take note, gentlemen, he could not help but do the only proper thing, to compose a poem. The first poem ever recorded in history. This is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh, and she shall be called woman. I love poem. From the beginning, right? It will shine out. It will flame out. God's grandeur is there, and we have to be able to see it. But what if you aren't good at poetry? And this is where the second part of Solomon's insight comes into play. It is the glory of kings to search a matter out. If you can't be like God in the making of poetry, at least be like a king in the understanding of it. Search out a matter. Search out speech. I think it's indicative of today's state of affairs that we are not at the level of kingship, because you can see that we don't like poetry very much. We're not ready for it. We need to get back to being kings again and searching the matter out. If you can't be like God in the making of poetry, at least try to understand it.